Welcome to the Success with Jewelry podcast, where we invite you inside our conversations about business success and marketing for jewelry designers and entrepreneurs.
We're Laryssa and Liz, jewelry marketing experts with a combined 16 years of experience in jewelry marketing and proven track records in helping jewelry brands meet their goals. When you listen to or watch this podcast, you get an intimate and exclusive peek behind the curtain of all the things you wish you could know about earning success in this industry.
Welcome to episode 119. In this episode, we're joined by the OG jewelry blogger herself, Danielle Miele of Gem Gossip. Danielle started her journey in the jewelry world as a passionate collector, blogger, and storyteller. Over the years, she's transformed Gem Gossip from a blog platform into a platform where she curates and sells stunning vintage and antique jewelry along with some of her original designs. We'll dive into the power of content and collaboration in the jewelry industry, how Danielle built a strong online presence, and her best tips for selling jewelry online. Whether you're looking to grow your audience, boost your sales, or refine your storytelling, you won't want to miss this conversation. In the bonus content, Danielle and I will recap the NYC jewelry trade shows that took place in early February. We'll share key takeaways, emerging trends, and what stood out to us this season. To access the exclusive content and direct access to both Laryssa and me, head over to successwithjewelry.com and sign up. Hey, Danielle and Laryssa, let's get into it. Hey, Danielle. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Welcome to the podcast. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you got started in the industry?
Okay, cool. I am Danielle Miele, and I started my blog, Gem Gossip, back in 2008. So it's been a while. You kind of have to rewind all the way back, and I like telling this story because it's fun and different, and it really takes me back to when I was just completely in love and had such a huge passion for jewelry, and I just didn't know what to do with it. To set the tone of everything, I would say I was living with my parents. I was 23 years old. We lived in the same house my entire life. We decided to finally move as a family, and that was probably the first step into finally, um, you know, moving somewhere where I didn't know anyone, I didn't have a job, I didn't have a car. So I was basically, you know, sitting there for the first time in my life with nothing to think about except something that I was really passionate about, which was jewelry. So all day, every day, once we had moved, I was just kind of staring at jewelry online. I was going on eBay and like buying random things and sending all of these links to my boyfriend at the time. And just like so into jewelry. And he, would work all day, and then he'd finally like talk to me on the phone at the end of the day, and I would just be so excited about the links that I sent him. And I was like, did you check out that ring or like that necklace? Like, what did you think about it? And at that point, he was kind of like, you should really do something with this because like I don't really care about jewelry, and you can like connect with other people that love jewelry just as much as you. And I was like, okay, but I don't know what to do. Like, I don't really want to work at a jewelry store. I feel like I'm not good at sales. And he was like, well, you should maybe start a blog. A lot of people are starting blogs. And if you want to, like, I can show you how to do that because that's what he did. He was really good at techie stuff and like creating websites and stuff like that. So he was like, come up with a name and we can go from there. So it's kind of how my blog was started. And that's, I think, in my opinion, like the first step into becoming a part of the jewelry industry, something that I didn't know anything about, but always dreamed of being a part of.
I love that. And in 2008, like blogging was it. Like the communities around blogs and blogging. I was a blogger, not in the jewelry space. I was like writing about like lifestyle and music or whatever. And I have friends that I met from blogging then that I'm still friends with. And I think that's something I love about
Yeah.
kind of the online community.
Yeah, there were very few people blogging. And, if there were blogs, it was mostly about fashion or just like everyday stuff. No one was really honed in on just jewelry and just fine jewelry. So I think that really also worked in my benefit because not only was like I one of the first, but I was one of the first to just have such a, you know, unique niche.
I'm going
Yeah.
to say something bold here real quick. You started Show Me Your Rings, and I'll let you tell the story of why you started that. But do you ever think about the like everything that's trickled from what you created and where jewelry Instagram and jewelry content is now?
I've always wondered, like, if I haven't started that, would people to this day like wear a ton of rings like all on all their hands? I know like it's not like a monumental thing, but I just think at least like whenever I go to a jewelry show, for example, I'm always like stacking on all of the rings and showing as much as possible in one photo. And I love like the maximalist style. That's always just kind of been what I've gravitated towards. So it's interesting to wonder like like how much of an impact did I actually have? I'm not really sure, but yeah, I've always so when I started Show Me Your Rings, I was specifically had this vision in my head where I wanted to find these photos of hands with tons of rings on them. And I remember Googling anything and everything to try to find these pictures that I had in my head. It was what I was trying to find. And I did it for hours and I maybe found like 4 or 5 pictures, which was fine because like I could at least have an example of what I was looking for. But I kind of put that post together and I was like, everyone who reads my blog, please like show me your rings, like send me photos of all of your rings, like your whole collection, or like if you're a designer, put all your rings on, send me a picture. And it was like, that was probably the first time in my life. This was before social media. So like I couldn't Instagram post it, that type of thing. I just had to put it on my blog and be like, email me your photos. So I was like opening these zip drives that I didn't even know if it was like a virus for my computer or what, but people were sending me all these photos from all over the world. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know this many people even read my blog. And then to not only, actually send me pictures, it was really cool.
I think it's super cool how you've carved out this space. I think me and Liz can relate to because we kind of like made jobs for ourselves in this industry. And I can't remember like exactly when I started following your blog, but it was way before I got into this industry, like so more than 10 years ago. And I mean, maybe not consciously, but I remember thinking like, oh, there is a space in the industry. And I feel like seeing like what you've done has inspired me in some way. And I think that's really cool. And so I think there are like ripple effects to these things that you've done.
Yeah, I never intend for certain things to be a certain way. It's just like kind of just like make, like you said, you made a job for yourself. Like I kind of was the same way too with like the different photo shoots I would do. And like it was hard back when I started blogging because it was like I wasn't really making money off of it. So it was
Mhm.
like, how do I turn this into something that someone could pay me for? So I knew I really liked photography and I loved doing photo shoots and I loved paying attention to details and like having designers send me jewelry. And from that, kind of create a photo shoot based off of what the jewelry evokes to me, from the outfit that I was wearing, the makeup that I wore, the nails that I ended up painting, just like every single detail was very thought out. And the first few shoots I did, which I think, Liz, you were one of the first few shoots with Todd Reed. Um, and it's just, I didn't never thought I did those for free, but I just kind of wanted to show like what I'm capable of and like what my vision was. And then once I did a few shoots, I was able to be like, okay, this is what I can do. And now like I tried to put a price on it to like do going ahead in the future, but that part was always hard for me because it's like, how do I put a price on something? But I also, I have to make money somehow. Um, but I always said like, if I'm able to monetize what I do in a different way, then I would always go back to focusing on blogging, which is my main love and passion, and try to do it more for free, like I like in the beginning, like how I did it in the beginning. So I'm kind of finally at that space in my life where I kind of went from blogging and creating content for other designers to finally now selling jewelry, which I never even thought of would be a part of what I do. So going from that to selling, and now I feel like I'm able to turn around and return to blogging again and being able to do things um, for free, and be sponsored by myself. So that's
Do
very
you,
amazing.
sorry, do
It's
you
okay.
find that that platform is still relevant in 2025? Because I always wonder about that, the blogging
The
platform.
blog, I don't know. We'll find out because I just kind of started blogging again in January. And for me, it's mostly like I just want to be creative again. Um, I was just I love selling jewelry, don't get me wrong. I love each piece that I sell. I just you kind of don't you get in a rut where it's not really super creative. I'm just a creative person, so like it's just revisiting that, and I do think a lot of people are wanting to kind of go back in time a little bit. And I know some people are even kind of going away from Instagram and trying to build their own website or their own platform because you never know what could happen in the future. And that would be crazy devastating to think of everything that I've built on Instagram be taken away. But we saw what happened with TikTok. And although it is back in like back up and running, but I really felt for the people that started on TikTok and were so focused on TikTok and didn't really put much effort into any other platform, and then to have it all, possibly wiped away. Like I was kind of really feeling for them and being like, okay, this is probably the time where I need to like start putting all my efforts back into my own website that I can control and all that.
That makes a lot of sense.
And it's so smart. I think that Laryssa and I are advocates for having an email list
Mhm.
and like bringing everything back to your platform and like, even like people talking about Substack, which is like an email blog situation, like it's still not anything you own. Like bring people to your location, like on the internet. And I think that the we'll get into this more, but I really wanted to talk to you, Danielle, about like content and the power of content because I was thinking about you and I was thinking about that, Jules, at your doorstep that we did ages ago. And it's like you still have that content to like,
Yeah.
on your blog. You have like 10 plus years of content, more than that, so much content on your blog. And that's like so great for like SEO purposes, driving people to you. Like content is everything. And I think that something else I want to mention real quick is like, back then when we did that jewels at your doorstep, like the jewelry industry, the fine jewelry industry in particular, was not thinking that content was important, right? It was like kind of like a lot of people were still kind of coming on to that idea. Whereas I kind of working for that brand was like, oh, I'm a blogger. I see the power of digital marketing and being online and collaborating and getting that content and having those photos to share. But it took a while for the industry to get on board with that. Do you think?
Yeah, it took a while to even um, be accepted to jewelry shows, to even take photos to put out on whether it was social media or my blog or anything. People would not even understand what a blogger is or like what they do. So like that was the very beginning where it was still like super rough to try to explain what I do and like why I would even be important in any way. But it's funny because like now all of that content still lives on my website. It's still also pinned on Pinterest. Like there's some pins that are still going viral or have like a lot of clicks, and they're pins that I made like 10 years ago. It's kind of crazy.
That's wild. And that is the power of content. It's a really incredible thing. And I love what you're doing now. And this is something Laryssa and I talk about a lot too, is like you're putting all this energy into making this content, like the personal collection stories. And now you're like resharing them again and you're using it again in a different way. And I think that's really, really smart.
Yeah, that feature of my blog is probably hands down my favorite feature to do. So I ask collectors to basically deep dive into their personal collections and open their jewelry box, take photos of what they own and tell me the stories behind the pieces. And my audience just absolutely loves it. It's anytime I do it, they get so excited to, not first off, just to be asked to be a part of it. They get so excited. And I've also loved connecting with these people even more on a deeper level. This is what social media is about, connecting with people and telling their stories. And um, I think a lot of these people that I've been asking, like, I see their stuff on my feed every day, but I just don't know their full stories. So, like, you really get to know them on a personal level through their jewelry, and it's just so fun. And people love finding new people to follow too. So that's great too.
I have a question I've always kind of wondered about your content. So, over the years, obviously now in 2025, like a lot of the jewelry industry is familiar with you as an influencer and they know you. But I know also you obviously sell and create content for outside the jewelry industry because that's ultimately you want the consumers to be seeing like the brands that you partner with and the jewelry that you're selling. So how do you balance kind of like talking like inside the industry versus like trying to reach a broader audience? And I know a lot of people out there are probably wondering this too because they feel like they're in this vacuum of like the jewelry industry and struggle to get out of it.
So you're asking like, how do you reach new people that, they might be interested in jewelry, but they just haven't really.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I
And
think
people
at this point, it's probably easy to keep speaking to the industry because a lot of people are familiar with you. But yeah, how do you kind of keep branching outside of that?
and to people who might buy the antique
Yeah.
jewelry you're selling and the pieces you're selling, like how do you speak outside of our little jewelry bubble?
Um, Gosh, that's hard to say. I just keep making the content, and I think a lot of it is word of mouth, and
Mhm.
other people who buy things from me will tag me, and
Hmm.
their friends who might not be necessarily into jewelry will see it and like maybe check it out. I do think a lot of people are starting to learn that it is a good idea to invest in fine jewelry rather than fashion jewelry. Um, and they're wanting to make those investments and they're not sure who to turn to, if they're getting ripped off, that sort of thing. So Google, for some reason, will like lead them somehow, some way to a page on my blog, and like they'll kind of just be there for a few minutes and hours, sometimes days, and be like, oh wow, there's so much information on this blog. Who is this? And eventually they'll follow me on Instagram, and like it kind of builds that way.
Hmm.
But I don't know, I guess just keep producing content, and people will eventually, if they're interested in jewelry, they'll eventually find you. But
Yeah.
do you think it's great that I do have those two Instagram pages? One is, my main page, Gem Gossip, and I'm constantly like trying to promote other brands and other people and just talking about my love for jewelry. I will obviously like post some things that I'm personally selling too, but I've been trying to stay away from that and like just keep selling to my shop Gem Gossip
Mhm.
page. Um, so I think that's having those two different platforms really helps too, because you really dedicate one headspace to one and one to the other. So like, I don't know, I think that's helpful for me too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I think that I know this about you too, that like you've had this boundary of like, I only do gold jewelry. I don't do sterling silver. I don't do costume. I don't do, and I think that's smart because you're like, you've leaned into this niche. And then same with your two pages. They're definitely both you, but you can tell there's like a different kind of goal and voice between the two.
Yeah, so true. And I've definitely been very adamant about sticking to that rule, because it's been my rule since day one is like, it's only fine jewelry. I don't want to talk about vermeil or gold plated or synthetic stones or anything like that because that's just not what I personally wear. And just to have that as a guideline, because otherwise I could be like, it could be so much stuff on there. It's very finely curated also. So I think that's important too.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you have so much user generated content to your point too, and that's something to help like keep growing and expanding past the industry or like our little bubble because to your point, like normal people who are buying your charms or your chains or whatever it is and they're sharing with their audience who aren't necessarily jewelry people, like you kind of keep expanding that way.
Yeah, and also doing the jewelry collection stories. Like I don't do them to get more followers. Like if that was the case, like why am I here? But it does actually produce more followers for me. Like it's a if you just stick to like doing things like posting things that you would want to see because you love it and creating content because you love it and that's what you would want to see, you will reap the benefits basically.
Hmm.
And I just think those who are kind of like asking like how do you go viral? How do you get more followers? Like if you're gonna ask that, like you'll never know because you shouldn't, I don't know, you just have to, I don't know. If that's your goal and like that's your
Yeah.
end goal, you'll never get there because that's
Yeah.
the goal.
Have you noticed in the past few years the algorithm like affecting you and your reach, and have you like shifted in any way to accommodate that, or has it been pretty steady for you with like the type of content you're creating?
I've definitely noticed that it definitely doesn't reach my full potential audience for sure. And it's definitely gotten worse. I would say probably 2022 to 2024 was, I think, really bad. Just like in terms of just like every month, it seemed like my content was just
Yeah.
not being shown to less and less people. And like story views being down. I also kind of equate that to like where I'm at in my life and like, yeah, I wasn't going to shows or like doing my jewelry road trips that people would get excited about. And, like it does really what I do really does affect my story views and that sort of thing. Um, but like, I don't regret that. And I do think it's important that, you do take time to step away and like follow your heart. And like, if you want time to be a mom and like do family stuff, I think that's important. And then you can always come back and like pick up where you left off. And like, I think that's totally cool. And like, I attribute, my following kind of like just really not growing much at all. In fact, I feel like I lost a lot of followers within that time period, but um, that's totally fine with me. Like, I'm not like upset about that, but I do think it's important for people to like be okay with stepping away. And then if they want to come back, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. I was just thinking too about the what you do in that thing you just did where people share within the different categories, your like jewelry advent calendar or like your
Oh,
jewelry
yeah.
calendar. Like that's a
Yeah.
great way to get people new followers too, because you're inviting people to share, you're sharing the content back. There's like a lot of cross promotion going on.
Yeah. Anytime I kind of come up with like a challenge or something like that, where I have a set like theme for the day and people will share there's, for example, like show me your sapphires today, and people can chime in with, their personal collection, the store that they work for, if they're a designer, their own brand. It's so cool to like see so many people follow along and actually do it. And so I was like, I did that all of January. And I was just like constantly resharing like as many as I possibly could because it's so exciting to see. And people also would get so excited that like I reposted their photo, and it was just fun all around. I love doing stuff like that. I wish I could do stuff like that all the time, but it's a lot of work. So
It's a lot of work. Yeah. Sorry, I called it an advent calendar.
oh
I don't
no,
know.
it don't, there was definitely we used to do one like an advent calendar in the vintage and antique community, and it was like that was another highlight. Like everyone looked forward to it. I forget when people kind of stopped doing it, but it kind of just fell off and no one really did anything ever again.
That happens. I think that one of my favorite things about having known you this long is that like the consistency of it all, like your top three gifts for Chris from the holiday season that like you every year, like how long have you been doing that? Forever? Or like show me your rings has been around forever. And it's so
Ever. I feel like I'm the queen of consistency. And like if if I ever have a tip for anybody, it's be consistent. Always show up, even if you
Yeah.
don't want to, even if you're feeling like sick or under the weather. Like I continuously show up every single day on Instagram. And like even when my views were so low and like my likes went from like being I used to get like 2,000 to 5,000 likes on a post back
Yeah.
like at the height, which was probably like 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
And now I would sometimes get like 200 or less. And like most people would just get really upset and be like, oh, it's just not working. Like, and I just never really was like bothered by that. I just kept going, kept doing what I've been doing forever. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's just me.
Well, it's interesting to hear you actually talk about it because you're saying like, oh, you took a break being a mom and stuff, and that you pulled back. For me, as like an outside viewer, it doesn't feel that way to me. Like you're so consistent. Like I always see you in my feed. I'm always seeing what you're doing, and I'm like, it's like surprising to me that you're saying that.
Yeah, like I think the funniest thing was when I had Gino, my firstborn. I had him and it was like opening day of JCK Couture. And I was like sad, obviously missing out, but I had a friend do like she was like my reporter. And so she was like going to do an Instagram takeover. And like I gave birth and then was like in the recovery room and like posting all of her posts that she was sending me. And people are like, wait, girl, you just had a baby, like still. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I need to put her content out. And I don't know, that's just the way I've always been.
Yeah. How I'm going like kind of off the questions now.
I love this,
Sorry.
Laryssa. I want
I'll
you're
fill this
doing like
out.
a full takeover.
I'm
This
sorry.
is great.
I'm
I'm here for it.
I'm curious, like, and maybe, well, whatever, I'll just ask. How do you manage your calendar? Like, how far in advance are you planning? And I know probably because people out there are like, how does she do it? How does she stay so consistent? How does she come up with all the like creative ideas? So what's like your process?
I think if I ever had like an intern or like someone come here to my office and was like, how do you do all this? And like they watched me, they would be like, are you like you're like living in 1999? Like everything I have is like I have a calendar that I like hand write everything. Everything's handwritten. Like all of my when I do my taxes and all that stuff, I handwrite everything. I don't know how to use Excel. I don't know how to, like, I'm very old school. And that's how I've always been. everyone's like, do you have an Instagram app where it like automatically will publish things? I'm like, no, I've been doing this for since like 2012. I think I've had my Instagram account. So if I don't post something one day, I feel like something's missing or like I'm
Mhm.
forgetting something. So like I wake up and I automatically am like, okay, what's today's post going to be? Like that's the first thing that I plan out. I don't really have much of like a content type thing. I feel like maybe just this past January, I somewhat have like an idea since I started to do that New Year's challenge in January. And then like this month, I'm doing my New York Now content as well as those jewelry collection stories. So like I do have things kind of planned out, but like that's the extent of it. But that's like this is like rare for me to have like some sort of like plan, I guess.
Yeah, I'm impressed because if it's not on a calendar for me, it ain't happening.
Yeah.
I'm with you,
People
though.
have,
I
like
don't have a Planoly app. I do everything in Instagram because I
me
don't know. It
too.
just feels better.
Yeah, my photographer friend Lauren, who came to New York Now with me, she's so funny. She has like that there's a certain app where she was like, okay, which one like looks good with my feed? And she was showing me all the different options, and I was like, that's I've never like planned that, like looking at my entire feed as like in general, but it's funny and everyone's different and I appreciate that. And yeah.
Yeah,
This is great. I mean, I just want to repeat it again because it's so good. Be consistent. Consistency is so important. It leads to growth. It leads to an engaged community. It builds trust. There's so much that comes from it. Um, but okay, a couple more questions before we head on to the bonus content. Unless, Laryssa, if you have any, feel free to dive in. But any mistakes to avoid when selling online, or any thoughts you want to share about, or like tips for selling online? Because I know a lot of designers are kind of looking for help in that area.
Yeah, so I kind of did something kind of fun to me at least. So like I said before, I have two different accounts. And so like my shop Gem Gossip account, I've always had like one person I was following, and that was my main account, and that was it. And one day I got the idea of following every person who buys something from me. And so I started doing that January 1st, 2024. So if someone bought something from me, I would like send them their tracking info, send them their frequent buyer card, which I always have. I have like a digital frequent buyer card, which is kind of fun. It was just like based off of like a sandwich shop having like a punch card. And my audience loves that. But so I would send them that and their tracking number, and then I would follow them. And like sometimes people would be private and they like wouldn't accept my request, which is totally fine. Like I get it. You don't want some random girl who sells jewelry to follow you. But for the most part, like everyone accepted following me, or like I just would follow everyone's account. And it's been really fun to see like my audience. Like this is like a true depiction of like who my audience is, even though like I've never really set out to be like, okay, this is the person I'm like marketing for, or like I'm shopping for this girl, like she's ages this and like that type of demographic. Like I've never really pictured like who my ideal customer is. And just by following all these people for like the past year, I've basically like shown myself who my audience is. And it's been really eye-opening. It's been like great to connect with these people. I've built like friendships with some of them. I just, it just randomly came up as an idea and I did it. And I think it's like one of the best ideas I've ever done. I'm not sure if it's
Brilliant.
like, I'm not saying like everyone should do that, but like
Mm.
it's a fun little thing I did.
Well, most of your customers on there, they're shopping through like DMs and comments, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's probably much easier than like if you had it
Right.
on a website or something. That's really
Yeah.
cool. I never thought about that as like a customer profile or something.
Yeah, right. Because when someone buys from my e-commerce site, like I can't, I don't know obviously what their handle is, on Instagram. So there have been a few moments where like my frequent buyer card, like someone's like, "Hey, wait, I bought more than just 4 items. Like I bought some stuff from you online." I was like, "Oh, okay." Like people usually either let me know if they're like very into that, but yeah, just since my selling is through DM, I think that's a fun way to do it.
I think that's a brilliant idea. Even if, you're selling through a website and it's harder to find people, I would still encourage you to try to find them and follow them. I think that's great. Because then you can build a relationship, you have a better understanding of who's shopping. I mean, such a great idea. I love that. Okay, let's wrap this up with any advice for emerging designers looking to build their brand.
I would say I just really gravitated towards any designer that really offers something that no one else is. And, to really find your niche and to really explore that and to not get stuck in what I like to call like trend traps, where you're kind of just like making designs to entertain a trend that's happening. If that trend is not like resonating with you, I don't think you should put time or energy into trying to make something to like fulfill that trend and to like move pieces quickly if like something is trending. Um, but yeah, I obviously consistency. I always like to talk about that and how showing up daily is important and just to build relationships with your customers. I think that's important too. And just, I do think it's really important to also reach out to influencers in this space. Like, it is really hard. I know when like I was first starting, like it was just always amazing to just be like reached out toward and just like talking and connecting with other designers because that part is like something you can totally explore and um it might not necessarily be like where you have a relationship where you monetarily can like give them money or not. It's just like depends on what you agree upon. But I think it's always nice to have that rapport with people you find in the jewelry space to like those that like catch your attention and you like their content and that sort of thing. Um, I think that's important too.
This is great. Danielle, thank you for being here. Where can people find you?
My Instagram handle is Gem Gossip, and I'm on gemgossip.com and shopgemgossip.com, all the things.
Thanks, everyone. What did you think of this episode? Let us know. Visit successwithjewelry.com. And if you love the podcast, we'd love to hear from you. Send us a message or leave us a review. Thanks for being a part of our community.